Have you ever tried to learn something new and just found yourself completely buried in jargon and super complex details? What if there was a way to just cut through all that noise and get to the simple, core truth of any idea? Well, guess what? There is, and it comes from one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century.
This right here, this single idea from physicist Richard Feynman is the absolute key. He believed that if you truly understand something, you can explain it simply. And if your explanation is complicated, you probably haven't understood it well enough yourself. That's the whole philosophy we're going to unpack today.
And we are going straight to the source. Everything we're talking about today comes directly from Feynman's own lectures at Cornell University, which were later published in this book. So this isn't just some theory somebody made up. We're learning the method from the master himself. Now, you have to understand, Feynman wasn't just some Nobel Prize-winning physicist. His colleagues all said he had this incredible, almost magical ability to bring his subject alive to the non-physicist. He was famous for making the most complicated ideas in the universe feel, well, intuitive and easy to grasp. And it turns out he had a specific method for it. And this really gets to the heart of the problem for anyone trying to learn anything, right? It is so easy to just memorize a definition or a formula for a test, but how do you build a real working knowledge of a concept? How do you go from just knowing the name of something to actually truly understanding it?
Well, the answer is what we now call the Feynman method, and it's this beautifully simple, super practical process for deconstructing any topic, testing your own understanding, and then rebuilding your knowledge on a foundation that's actually solid.
And here it is, just 4 simple steps. First, you pick a concept and you really dig in and study it. Step 2, and honestly, this is the secret sauce, you try to explain it in the simplest terms you possibly can, like you're talking to a little kid. This forces you to get rid of all the jargon. Step 3, you find the gaps. Where did you get stuck? Where did you fall back on a complicated word because you couldn't simplify it? That tells you exactly where you need to go back and study more. And finally, step 4, you simplify it even more, and you use analogies, polishing that explanation until it's crystal clear. So steps 2 and 4. That's where the real magic happens. But it's easy to just say simplify, right? What does that actually look like? How do you take a really complex idea, like a law of physics, and make it simple without totally losing its meaning? Well, lucky for us, Feynman didn't just tell us, he showed us. So let's actually watch the method in action, with an example straight from his own lectures, where he explains one of the most fundamental principles in all of science.
So these are his words. He's about to explain the conservation of energy, a deeply abstract and mathematical idea, but he doesn't start with a bunch of equations. Nope. He starts with a story, a silly analogy, as he puts it.
Okay, so here's the setup. Picture a kid who has 28 indestructible blocks. That number, 28, is the key. The mother counts the blocks every day, and every single day she finds 28. The number of blocks is conserved. It's a constant. It doesn't change.
But then, of course, things get a little more complicated. One day, she only counts 27 blocks. After a quick look around, she finds one outside the window. Phew! The total is still 28. But then another day, there are only 25. Now the mother suspects 3 are hidden in a toy box that the kid won't let her open. The total should still be 28. But how can she be sure? And this brings us right to the core idea of what a conservation law is. It's not really about the physical things, like the blocks themselves. It's about a number you can calculate which stays the same no matter what else is going on, just like our magic number of 28 blocks. So how does this clever mom solve the problem? She weighs the toy box. See, she knows the weight of an empty box, and she knows the weight of a single block. So she can do a little math and figure out exactly how many blocks are inside without ever having to see them. She found a new way to measure, and you guessed it, the total is still 28. And that right there is a brilliant example of the method. Feynman took this abstract idea of energy, which, like he says, isn't a physical thing, it's just a number we calculate, and he turned it into something simple and tangible, indestructible blocks. He made the abstract real. That's step 4, simplify and use analogies. But here's where it gets even more interesting. It turns out this method for learning is almost a perfect mirror of how scientific discovery actually works. You see, Feynman saw science not as some rigid set of formulas, but as a creative, messy process of guessing and checking.
Just look at this process. First, you make a guess. You propose a new law. Then, you do the math and figure out all the consequences. What should happen if your guess is correct? And finally, the most important step, you compare your results to a real-world experiment to see if it actually works. This simple loop of guessing and testing is the engine of science.
And Feynman was absolutely ruthless about this last step. He said it doesn't matter how beautiful your idea is, or who came up with it, or how smart they are. If it disagrees with the experiment, it's wrong. Period. You have to be willing, even eager, to find the flaws in your own thinking.
So here it is. This is the big reveal. The Feynman method for learning is basically just the scientific method applied to your own brain. When you try to explain an idea simply and you get stuck, that's your failed experiment. That struggle points directly to a gap in your knowledge, just like a real experiment points to a flaw in a scientific theory.
So what does all this mean for you? It means you have this incredibly powerful tool not just for cramming facts, but for gaining true, deep understanding. The goal isn't just to consume information anymore, it's to be able to really articulate it.
The main takeaway is this. The next time you're trying to learn something new, don't just ask yourself, do I get it? Instead ask, could I explain this to a 10-year-old with a simple story? Your honest answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about how well you understand it.
This method is like a universal toolkit for learning that really puts you in the driver's seat. It's a way to diagnose your own blind spots and build a rock-solid foundation of knowledge on any topic. So I'll leave you with this. What's the first complex idea you're going to try to truly understand?